So as we have finally come to Easter Sunday, the big day is finally here, and we can all be super excited, and this is great. I know that some of you were probably dragged here by your family. I appreciate you taking time to be here, and we're excited that you're here with us this morning. I want to talk to you about this idea of hope in an empty tomb. If you were visiting with us, we've been doing a sermon series called Encountering Hope, where we've looked at different interactions that Christ has had and where they have led to hope. And so on Sunday last week, we looked at a hope in the hype. On Palm Sunday, that there was a lot of hype that took place that day as Jesus enters Jerusalem, but that there was also a lot of hope because of what would happen. And then we spent time on Thursday night on what we call Maundy Thursday, this celebration of the Last Supper and the washing of the disciples' feet. And during that, I talked about this idea that it can be uncomfortable attending a new church, and that didn't happen for me until I was in college, because I'm a pastor's kid. My dad is a pastor down in South Jersey, and so the churches we were at, I mean, they were kind of stuck with me, so it is what it is. But I talked about that first time that I went to a church where it was so uncomfortable, and I talked about the irony that was there in that. And I talked about that because of Christ and what Christ did, that there is a place for you. There's a place for all of us at the communion table and at church. That there is hope at the table, there is hope in the church. But I want to talk to you today about that everything has a beginning. In life, we have beginnings. My wife and I, we are expecting our first son. His due date is today. Not here yet. Don't know when he's coming. But whenever he decides to make his grand entrance, that's the beginning of his life. And in order for me to be the pastor here, I had to start on a journey with schooling and then through a process. And then in order for me to be appointed back in February, I had to meet with the SPRC here at the church. We got to meet each other, and they had to give the thumbs up, and they did. And then my wife Beth and I, we moved up here to Milltown. And so that was the beginning. So everything has a beginning. And if you've ever wondered why we as Christians celebrate Easter Sunday and why we're super happy about it, is not because we just get to gather around the table with our family. While that's great, that's not the reason why we're excited. We're excited because this day marks the starting point of our faith. The belief that Jesus Christ died and rose from the dead so we can be in heaven. This is the starting point. John chapter 20, verse 1. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So there's a stone that's placed in front of the tomb because the Roman government and the Pharisees and Sadducees heard Jesus talking about raising again in 3 days, and they were really paranoid. And they were like, you know what would stop the disciples from stealing Jesus' body and just making up that he rose from the dead? If we put a big boulder in front of it, that'll take care of that. And so when Mary gets to the tomb, she's expecting to see guards there in this tomb in front and having to ask them to roll away the stone for her to do what is a part of the custom of burial during that time. And she gets there and the stone's gone. And when it says taken away, it means excessive force, almost like a superhero pushing something. Excessive force, it was rolled away. Verse 2. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. So Mary jumps to the conclusion that grave robbers had to be grave robbers. After all, it wasn't a far-off guess. Back in Bible times, that was a very serious issue. And so Mary is really worried, and Peter and John are worried as well, to the point where they are running. We'll see that they're running, and they're running just kind of like you and I. If we found out that our house was robbed, we probably wouldn't just casually go over. We'd probably run. Verse 4, both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. And I love John, because John feels very good about himself, the disciple that Jesus loved. Not this other Peter guy, but the disciple that Jesus loved. And he got there first. That's just one of those details that's got to be mentioned. I'm glad his priorities are in order. So John gets there first in verse 5, and stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he didn't go in. So he sees them, but he decides not to go in. Then Simon Peter came, verse 6, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. I've had my car broken into once, and it was kind of a mess when I got to it. I've never had my home broken into or anything like that. And I hope that you've never experienced either of those. But if you have, I think that you'll agree with me that they don't clean up before robbing you. It's not like they walk into your house and they see a bunch of kids' toys out and they're like, oh, let me straighten this up before I rob them blind. It'll be great. No, they go in, they take what they need. And so when the disciples see that this cloth is folded up, they immediately realize that Jesus' body wasn't stolen. It reminds me of that State Farm commercial where you have the two women that are looking at this couch in this woman's apartment, and they say to each other, oh, this couch, it's so you. And she's like, I know, right? And then they say, is it suede? Oh, yeah, it's suede. I love suede. And then the next scene is two men robbing this apartment, and they're looking at this couch, and they say the exact same things. This couch is so you. I know, right? Is it suede? Yeah, it's suede. I just said to myself, I got to have it. And I don't think that's how robberies takes place. No, so we can tell the difference, and so they realize, and it leads them to believe. Verse 8. Then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, again John, also went in and saw and believed. For as they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead, then the disciples went back to their homes. So to go from the resurrection of Christ to when the Queen of England dies, there's really no way to make that smooth transition. You just got to kind of do it. So when the Queen of England dies, there's actually a plan in place, believe it or not. When the Queen of England dies, for 12 days, they will not show any comedy. No funny movies, no funny TV shows. They won't show any of that. Because they don't want people to be happy. They don't want people laughing. And that's how it is when a leader dies. Those that love their leader, normally they mourn. They're very upset. In England, when the Queen dies, they're not laughing. And those that don't like that leader, they celebrate. Whether it's a boss that gets fired, everybody's happy that didn't like him. But it's kind of the opposite with Christ. Because we as believers, we who follow Christ, we celebrate. Because we know that death has been overcome. We know that we have a reason for optimism. And so I want to close with this story called Where's the Pony? There's there's these identical twins, and they're the same in every single way except for one way. And the one way that they're not the same is that one is an extreme pessimist and one is an extreme optimist. And the parents are concerned about the two different ends of the spectrum that their sons are on. And so they decide that they're going to go see a doctor. So the doctor says, well, let's try this. You give the pessimistic boy a brand new bike, top of the line. And you give the optimistic boy a nicely wrapped box of manure. I know, you thought on Easter Sunday you'd hear the word manure. I know. So the parents think that this doctor's just crazy. They're like, there's no way we can do this, right? And the more and more they think about it, they're like, no, we should do this. So they decide that they're going to do this. So the birthday rolls around, and they give the pessimistic boy a beautiful bike. One that you and I, as children, we just would have been so jealous of. And the pessimistic boy looks at it and says, well, I'll probably crash it, probably break my leg, and probably have to go to the hospital. And the parents, they can't believe it. And then they hand the optimistic boy this box, and he unwraps it, and he opens it, and he sees that it's manure. And he looks at it puzzled for a little bit. And then his face lights up, and he goes running outside and saying, you can't fool me, there's got to be a pony somewhere, where's the pony? I saw on Facebook that we let 5 minutes, a bad 5 minutes, ruin our whole day. I'm naturally a pessimist, naturally pessimistic. And there's others that are naturally optimistic. And normally we find ourselves as one of those two boys. But the beauty is that we have hope. We have hope in an empty tomb. We have to make the decision to be optimistic. See, we live in a world where it's so easy to be pessimistic. There's so many things that are wrong. Almost every day you turn on and there's something else that's wrong with this world. And I think whether you're a believer or not that's here today, we can agree on that. The world is not in great shape. But we can choose to be optimistic. We can choose to be optimistic because the tomb is empty. If you want to join us and you're a visitor, I invite you to come back. We have a great Sunday school program where we talk about these ideas of hope. Because in the midst of a world that seems so hopeless, we can have hope. So let's be a people that leave here today, a people that are filled with hope. But let's not just choose to be optimistic for ourselves, but let's bring that hope to those who need it. Because there's one thing this world needs, and this world needs hope. Amen.